Hello, everyone. Welcome to Community Conversations. My name is Tyrone Davis. I'm the Audience Engagement Director here at Senate Theater Group. Thank you all so much for being here. This is a chance for us to dive deeper into the themes and ideas of the plays on our stage and connect it to our lives. And so I'm so excited for Until the Flood Community Conversation. We'll be exploring the question, how can I build a racially just society? How many of you had a chance to see the play already? Nice. How many have seen the play tonight? Wonderful. I think you're in for a wonderful experience. This is a really important play. And so before we get started, I want to introduce the director who's actually here with us today, Neil Keller. He's our Associate Artistic Director, as well as the director of the play, Until the Flood. So please welcome Neil Keller.
Hi, I'm thrilled to be here with you tonight, and I'm especially thrilled because I'm not really going to talk about the play, which I often do. I'm really excited to hear what the panel has to say about the topic and to let them go. But I'm happy, I'll be around, I'm watching the show tonight, so I'm happy after the show if you have questions about the specific show, please feel free to ask me. I've been with the show since Dael started creating it back in 2015, and this is, I think, the 10th or 11th production of the play that we've done. It's traveled around the country and been in Europe this last summer as well. But Tyrone asked me to speak tonight just to acknowledge in the room the passing this week of Kirk Douglas, who underwrote this theater and who the theater is named for him. I had the great privilege of meeting him on many occasions because for many, many years until he and his wife Anne couldn't do it anymore, they came to every show. They sat in the front row. They loved this theater. They loved being here. Almost every actor who's been here, I remember talking to Denai Guerrera, John Hurt, Dael, when she did a previous show here called Forever many years ago. They all had that moment at the Douglas where they walked out on stage to perform their first scene and realized, oh my God, it's Kirk Douglas sitting right there, because he would sit right with his feet on the stage in the front row. And he was a real presence around here. He told one great story that I always tell everyone, that when we opened the theater, we had a big ceremony, and he was just so proud and excited that he had seen the potential in this building and the potential of what it could do for Center Theater Group and for LA doing new plays by young writers and what it could do for Culver City. And he told this story about how many, many decades ago, when it had been a movie theater and he was shooting at MGM, which is right across the street, now Sony, he would often sneak across the lot, often he said sort of half still in costume, and sneak up into what was in the balcony of the movie theater and watch the movies here in this theater, and nobody knew he was here, including he said he once watched Spartacus with an audience who didn't know he was upstairs in the balcony watching, and then he would sneak back over and finish filming over at MGM. And so the theater was an incredibly special place to him, so I just thought we should acknowledge his presence and his passing this week. But thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, Neil. So I'm going to welcome up the moderator for this conversation to lead us in this discussion. We have Jasmine Gates. Jasmine is the founder of the New Black History Makers brand, where its purpose is to facilitate safe spaces to discuss conversations around issues around the Black community, globally, locally, and nationally. And so I'm so excited to have her lead us in this conversation. She is also a journalist for Real Urban News and also the Hub Radio. And so please welcome Jasmine Gates.
So like they said, thank you guys for trusting us with your Friday night. I guess we'll have you guys introduce yourselves. Thank you for the introduction, Tyrone. But go ahead.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is, can you hear me? My name is Tyree Boyd-Pates. I am the American Western History Curator at the Autry Museum, formerly the History Curator at the California African American Museum, and I'm so happy to be here.
It's moving.
Okay. You want to go ahead?
Yeah.
Should we just hold on?
Yeah, just hold on. Sure.
Mine is fine.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Aaron Thompson. Thank you for having me. I'm Aaron Thompson. I am a Los Angeles police officer. I've been a police officer for about, over 11 years now. So that's what I do. I also do a lot of other ventures outside of being a police officer. the last 3 years, I've been doing stand-up comedy as well, trying to bridge the gap that way as well. It's working. I'm not getting paid for it that much, but that's what happens in the beginning.
Right.
But thank you for having me.
Yes, and Nina.
Yes, my name is Nina Childs. I am a playwright and a director. I'm also a Los Angeles native, and I'm very excited to be here tonight. I do a lot of community activism in the community where I live, which is Compton, California, and I'm just really excited to be here tonight and tackle these very weighty subjects.
Right. So before we dive into conversation, I want to make it known that we are here for basically because people have died. There are a lot of mixed emotions around a lot of the stuff that's happening in our societies. But I want to also remind people that Trayvon Martin, he would have turned 25 on this past Wednesday. Sandra Bland would have turned 33 today. And then, of course, the reason why we're here, Mike Brown, which is the subject of the play, he would have been 24 in this upcoming May. So they all were killed, and their names were just left to be written on this continuing list of black people in America that have suffered racial injustices. So please, as you guys are sitting here, feel free to take out your notepads, your note apps, and shelf this conversation. This is not a conversation that we're just having for the sake of having a conversation. For a lot of us, it's life and death. So the things that we're saying today, they can definitely save your life or save someone else's life, and we please just ask that this conversation exists beyond the sound of all of our voices, and that you really take heed. And like I said, shelf the conversation, revisit it, because we're not up here in a happy space right now. This is something where we have to plead for our lives, and these are the environments where lives will be saved. So that's all that we ask. But now getting into the conversation, I want each panelist to, anybody can start, but to jump in, I just want you to share one racial injustice that you experience, whether it be something that happens often or just one that has stood out in your lifetime. Who wants to start? Who wants to grab it?
Ladies,
Yeah.
sure. Well, I went to Hamilton High School, not too far from here, off Robertson, and I remember as a sophomore, maybe a junior, walking and having missed the bus, I was walking up Robertson to catch the blue bus to get down Robertson, and 2 police cars pulled me over and asked me for my ID. And I remember after the line of questioning and them letting me go without offering me a ride to school, I went to the nurse's office to call my grandmother, and she yelled at me very angrily. I didn't understand why she was yelling. I was safe. But she told me that they didn't stop me because I missed the bus. They stopped me because I was a black boy in Beverly Hills. And that moment would trigger an interest in understanding my relationship as a black man to the Los Angeles Police Department for years to come.
Right. Nina, did you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I recall years and years ago, before I got married and then divorced, when I was dating my then husband, he had just bought this old school car, and he was so excited, and we were like, we're gonna go cruise in the car, and we got pulled over, and just the fear that he was displaying, and that he was just like, be quiet, don't say anything, don't blink your eyes. I was just like, whoa, I had never really been pulled over, and I wasn't really aware of, the fear that comes along with that for black men,
Right.
and that's something that definitely sticks out to me.
Right. Okay, Aaron.
Not the first time, there's been many times, but one of the times I remember before I became a police officer, I got pulled over. My hat was backwards. It was a Sunday morning. I was about to go play some basketball. It was an old 94 Ford Tempo. And I'm driving it, and I get pulled over by a sheriff. And the first thing he said to me was, "Is this your car?" It wasn't like, "Hey, I'm Officer so-and-so. What's your name?" It wasn't license, registration, proof of insurance. Was this my car? The first thing I thought to him was, if I stole a car, it wouldn't be a 94 Ford Tempo. But,
Right.
but that was the first time kind of as a driver experiencing some type of, injustice. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just to drive the point home that a lot of these things aren't taken care of in these political rooms. Sometimes for us, these are everyday issues that we are facing, just everyday things. I mean, kids have to go to school. That's something, you can't stop that. And, we are late sometimes. We have to drive places. So those are just regular occurrences. You might wake up and a racial injustice might, be meeting you on the 405 or the 105. Those are the kind of things that we deal with. But Tyree, I wanted to go to you. Historically, like, when have we seen racial justice?
Man, it was directly after slavery. It was called the Reconstruction period. It was 7 years where the United States, after enslavement, decided to actually offer newly emancipated blacks the opportunity to be grafted into the American dream. It would come to an end in 7 years when I believe, we'll say a president, completely undid Reconstruction, and then that was when the black codes were enacted. Black codes. What are black codes? Black codes essentially criminalize black people after enslavement, making sure that they could not be able to involve themselves any way, shape, or form with proximity to whites. After black codes, it would be the archetype for what we now know as Jim Crow. And in Jim Crow, we understand that's exactly what Dr. King, Rosa Parks, and so many others were trying to undo. But it was only for a sliver of time. And many people think it was the Obama years, but it probably came 100 years before, several hundred years before.
Right.
But it was after emancipation.
Right. So then let's just dive into the question. Why is it so difficult, Nina? This one is for you. Why is it so difficult for racial justice to exist here in America today?
Well, it kind of goes back to that now infamous speech that our beloved brother Joaquin Phoenix just gave at the BAFTA Awards, where, we have to, look to the people who are benefiting from systematic racism to dismantle it. As people of color, we can fight, we can push for legislation, we can fix ourselves within our own communities, but it's going to take those who are benefiting from systematic racism to finally admit, oh, white privilege, it does exist, it's a thing, and that's the start of it, to just kind of acknowledge that and work it out from there.
Right, and it's crazy that we are still talking about the start, that we still have to acknowledge that that's the start because it kind of hasn't started. But Aaron, I want to go to you. A lot of times we hear, the system is this way by design. With you being a part, well, first of all, do you consider yourself a part of the system and a victim, or is it either or for you?
Good question. Usually when you say good question, I mean, don't know the answer, but I knew, becoming a police officer, I knew what, first of all, I didn't want to be a police officer growing up. It was just something, I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be an American lit teacher, actually. I majored in English and minored in theater. Became a cop. A friend of mine, a close friend of mine, was like, "Hey, why don't you be a police officer?" I didn't want to, and then I saw how much money they were making, and at the time they were laying off teachers, and I was like, "Wow, this is 100% more than what I'm making right now." So I applied. I mean, my mom had, a record felony. My sister had a felony. Both my parents were addicted to drugs. I moved around so much. I was homeless at points in my life. I mean, I had a rough upbringing at times. I knew that if I were to become a cop, I knew that I was going to get backlash from folks. I knew that, sometimes you label all cops as under one umbrella, which is not the case. So I knew that I was going to be part of that system that people have in their minds. Right. And then I knew that, growing up and dealing with certain cops that weren't the greatest people, but then I met now, of course, my past 11 years, I met way more great cops than not great cops. Right. So I knew that I was going to be part of the system and be part of and be a victim at the same time. That's something that, growing up you know, in certain areas, it's just that's the way it was, and I was fine with it. I just knew that I'm man enough to deal with it,
Right.
you know.
And I think that's important. A lot of times when we look at the actions, so we talked about they talked about the injustices that they saw, and something to think about. A lot of times we attack actions, but then like what predates actions, I believe it's relationships, and then before the relationships is the mentality. The mentality you have on that group of people allows you to form relationships, and because of the relationships that you have with that group of people, that then turns into the actions that you'll act out. So he just said that he's been in the forest for, about 11 years? Over 11 years, and he's met, you know, nice police officers and stuff. That might not come from us. So back to you, Aaron, how do you think that would work, us being able to see the police officers in the light that you see them as they're policing us?
Well, where I work now, I'm a part of a unit called the Community Safety Partnership.
Okay.
It's in Watts. We're assigned to the housing development. So I'm assigned to Jordan Downs housing developments. I was assigned to Nickerson Gardens for about 3.5 years. Okay. One thing that someone told me, which I already knew, but he just reiterated, it was a captain. And he came in the roll call one time, and he was talking to all of us, and he was like, with your badge, you have to humble yourself even more. Because now you have power to actually, I can take somebody's freedom with just some handcuffs. Click, click, now you mine,
Right.
you know. So, but it takes a partnership, and you know, we're partnering with the stakeholders in Watts. Right. We're partnering with the people who have been there for years. I give you a brief story. One time, the chiefs, and they're old, and one is about to retire, and I'm pretty sure he was part of the problem, and he said that he was part of the problem when he first got to the LAPD, but now he's part of that paradigm shift where it's about, you know, making a difference and not always just arresting and not always, but anyway, there was the Summer Night Lights program where parks during the summer stay open till about 11 p.m. Okay. And so they have basketball programs. I walk in the gym. He said they want us to play and be with the kids and even the adults. They had an adult league, basketball league. I walked in the gym and I said, hey, I want to play in your league. The guy, his name is Donnie. He put me, you know, he's like, all right, I'm going to put you on the team. I'm walking in uniform onto the court just to pass, and I see a guy shooting around. I'm like, hey, what's up? How you doing? I'm Aaron. And he goes, I don't F with the police. I don't talk to y'all. Right. And I was just like, all right, okay. And then I just like left it at that. I walked away. 10 minutes later, he sees I'm lacing up my shoes on the same bench he's coming to. And he goes, oh, you playing with us? And I was like, yeah. He was like, oh, that's what's up. Gave me a handshake, and we were friends ever since.
Right.
So it's a partnership.
Yeah.
It's a partnership. It's the officers in the community that you're assigned to, and sometimes if you're working regular patrol, they don't have the luxury I do. They can't. They're going from call to call to call to call to call.
Right.
Sometimes it gets getting out of the car, going up to somebody, looking them up and out. Hey, I'm Officer so and so. I'm in the area. If you ever need any help, let me know. You're gonna get 8 out of 10 times down there. You probably get a F you. I don't care. But then at least you tried.
Right. Yeah, that's real.
Can I add something?
Go
to
ahead.
That? Yeah, because you're coming from a place where you are looking to serve the community. And that's why I'm so big on, you know, especially with the climate that we're in now, sometimes I feel like there needs to be more African Americans policing our communities because here in Compton, our sheriff is a black woman. And I feel incredibly safe being pulled over by her because I know that when she sees me, she's not in fear. Right. You know, she's not automatically on the defense. And so, you know, coming from that place of looking to serve the community as opposed to looking to the members of that community as a threat and, you know, as a crowd that you need to police and, you know, corral.
Right. To Tyree, I want to back to that statement about the system being this way by design, meaning like it was very intentional. We got to this place by someone else's intentions. Is it easier to just dismantle it rather than to work within it? Because like we said earlier, where the start looks like this, the start looks like this. Well, we're in 2020, and like I said, we're here because of the death of somebody. We just celebrated Trayvon Martin's birthday. Today is Sandra Bland's birthday, with so many more. So do we continue to let these deaths happen and hope that this start comes, or do we just create new system?
Well, I mean, we have to look at why the system was built to begin with.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that the reason why America exists is predicated on black labor. Black labor, indigenous lives slaughtered, right? So my job as a historian is to tell the unvarnished truth. I'm not here to lie. I am not a prophet. I am just merely a person who looks at the record and the log. The history of this country is built on the plunder of our bodies, the plunder of our minds, and the plunder of our resources to extract and then to add into a booming economy that now exists as a world power to this day. It's only built off black women's labor and black men's blood, sweat, and tears, if not both, actually both, excuse me. Systems are designed to make sure that they don't break down. So the systems that we're trying to undo now are not new. They can't be undone unless we look at the beginning and the manufacturers and the architects who started it. Those are our forefathers.
Right.
The same men who we're all about to celebrate President's Day about. These are the forefathers.
Right.
So we have to look at the initial document, the Constitution, and ask very critical questions. What makes a man?
Right.
What makes a woman? What makes a human? And then what makes property?
Right. Right.
3/5 a compromise. It's very simple.
Right.
So until we can fix the Constitution for which our country is built off of, everything that is happening now, including Sandra Bland, Trayvon Martin, and countless others, will continue to happen because the system is what? Predicated on the plunder of black bodies.
So now we have, did you have?
I just had a quick, just real quick. I agree with what he's saying. And sometimes the system that we have gives power to the wrong people. The person who took Trayvon Martin's life is not a police officer.
Right.
Never was one. Thought he was one because the people in his
Right.
neighborhood or whoever circle gave him that power.
Right.
He thought that he had that power. He was not a police officer. The communication and the partnership that we were talking about could have, with Brown and the officer that got into that situation, if the communication was there in that, and that partnership was there in that area, it probably would have never happened. However, with the incident that Brown was just in before that happened, and that officer not knowing that just happened, but it was just miscommunication. Right. That officer being scared and all that stuff. I mean, if from jump the system, and now it's crazy that LAPD, if you go to the recruitment center, you're gonna see a bunch of black officers because they're trying to recruit blacks, but it's just even the chief has on record to say we need more black officers.
It's system. So I'm a firm believer of you can't, put. I don't want to say, dirty people in clean clothes, but you can't put a clean person in a dirty system and expect that they're going to change it. And I think also, like I said, the system is this way by design. So even if you do put those people who are of like mind, you have to understand the power in that statement that it is this way by design. When you get a blank sheet of paper, and if you're writing your name on it, you put exactly what you wanted to say on that piece of paper. That's what they have done when they took us from the motherland and they brought us here, and we were trying to learn the language and we were trying to educate them and we were trying to get right with massa. They were designing things. And we are just now kind of catching up to seeing, okay, this system is not basically for us. Nina, I want to go to you. When it comes to like politicians and when we're in the room with people that are, lawmakers or they have the grounds to make laws, how do we apply pressure? because we're having this conversation, but I do want to make sure we're leaving with like tokens. Like when they go back to their council meetings, also make sure whatever city that you live in, find out where your council meetings are. Are they They're Tuesdays?
In Compton, they're Tuesdays.
Yeah, on Compton, they're Tuesdays. And I think
6
some are
o'clock.
on Wednesdays too, but find out where they are. But how do we apply pressure to these lawmakers that are, policing us or that are authorities?
I mean, well, I think it's really about holding people accountable, and Compton is going through a great resurgence right now. I was actually in the room the other day with Mike Bloomberg, and I had to come at him kind of crazy because it's like, well, how are you feeling about Mike? I'm like, well, how are we feeling about stop and frisk? This is something that's going to follow you for a long time, and, it's great to come here and campaign and give all of these promises, but what we have to do as community members and stakeholders in our community is make sure that our politicians are following through with the things that they're saying that they're going to do. We have the power to elect and unelect. And so that's the big part of it for me. You can't really hold a politician accountable outside of your vote. And so civic engagement is so important, especially in minority communities. We've been brainwashed into thinking like nobody wants to be the popo that's black. Like our vote doesn't count, and that's completely not true. So civic engagement and holding your local council members, mayors, and governors accountable is key.
And Tyree?
And to that point, I think it's so valuable that she says the significance of our vote. But we also have to reconsider or consider the malaise that exists between black and brown people about our judicial system that causes us to continue to mistrust it, because so many times our expectations have been let down. We've been gaslit by the system over and over, particularly politically. And millennials and Gen Zers are exhausted by that. And they don't trust us as we tell them to trust it. So looking at these candidates, looking at this election cycle, I can completely understand why people are disenchanted and want to walk away. But it's also very important for us to shake the malaise off and to understand that is R.I.P. Nipsey Hussle, but it's a marathon and not a sprint. And so how do we, I guess it's a question back to you, is how do we activate those Gen Zers and those millennials considerate of the malaise that exists for them?
Right, and an example of that, because that's a really good point, when we talk about voting, they pushed us in high school. They were telling us vote, vote, vote. Obama got in office. It was like, oh, we want to vote for black men. They were like, you need to vote, do all of this. But then what happened was they started rigging basically like the polls and stuff. They started shutting down polls. It wasn't as accessible. People that were sending in their ballots, they weren't getting counted. So that's the letdown. It's like, okay, you fire us up and you get us gaslit, but then when we show up, it's like, how are you closing? It's 4 p.m. Or your name is not on the list. And those are the kind of things where you got us to show up. The millennial, I think they were the ones that got Obama basically in office. You got us to show up. But we didn't show up when it came for Trump, because when we did try to show up the second time, it was like there weren't things available, or what was available to us before, it wasn't there anymore. But go ahead.
And we didn't finish the work. It's really important to understand the branches of government and how they work. I like to look at it like presidents, governors, and mayors are like the celebrity faces of the political system. We have to make sure that we're voting for Senate members. We have to make sure that we're voting for Congress members. We have to make sure that we're voting in our local election levels, like for council members and for school districts and things like that. Those are the people that really push policy. So, Obama all but got on his knees and begged us to vote in the Senate elections. And we didn't. And what we got was a house full of Republicans, which tied his hands. And so then we want to talk about what did and didn't happen during his administration. Well, what can you do when you have a house full of Republicans and you're a Democratic president, a black Democratic president? We have to finish the work.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about more so of like the mental aspect and how it has affected us. Aaron, just as a black man, I know that you also are a police officer, but I think that that the black man shows before your blue uniform. What has been, when you hear about Mike Brown, the Trayvon Martins, the Ryan Twymans, when you hear about those men or boys that look like you, may act like you, may sound like you, and they're getting gunned down and murdered, what does that do to you mentally?
Mentally, it saddens your heart first. Like you hear something, and you're just like, not again. Or like, you get sad. You start thinking about your life. You start going back to where you barely made it out of certain situations. At some crazy party that shots rang out, or you start thinking about everything. And you start thinking, I got kids. Then you start thinking as a father. You start thinking about your boys or my daughter, and you start thinking about what to tell them when they hear about it on social media or TV or news like that. And then lastly, I think about it as a police officer. I don't do this. When I'm off, I'm off. Like, don't call my phone on some police stuff. I don't want to hear it. I don't watch the news that much. But I start to ask, okay, well, what were the circumstances? What were the facts? What happened? What did that officer do? What did he see? What did she hear? What did the driver say? What were they doing? What were they, so you start trying to, and of course, a lot of us, we start, we do it too. We Monday morning quarterback, we go, I wouldn't have done that. That cop's stupid. He shouldn't have never done that, So, and we start assuming before the facts come out. And so, I mean, mentally, your mind is just going 1,000 miles per hour. For me, and then you have to assess and step back and try to, that's when, shoot. For me now, it's like I try to meditate now, yoga. You have to try to reflect and just to take a step back, because mentally it's tough.
Yeah, and I think even without being a police officer, Nina, really quick, I want you to, because I know that you have 2 black boys, and I want to also push the importance of the fact that we as black people, I don't have kids, but we have to figure out how to speak to our black girls and black boys when they're dealing with the police. So the police are supposed to come and they're supposed to serve our community, right? Regardless of what is going on, they signed up for the job. If something crazy is going on, they signed up for the job. They're supposed to dismantle it. However, there's a lot of conversations that we have to have with our 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and it's kind of like a scare tactic into acting as perfect as you can in case something like that happens, or using the right language. So Nina, what are some of the concerns that you have? What are some of the tactics that you're teaching your young boys in regards to that, this topic, basically?
Well, I'm a mother hen. I keep my kids very close.
Right.
I always tell them you can't do anything by yourself except for pray to Jesus. So I keep them close. So, because I have a 12-year-old right now. The situation with Tamir Rice, he was just playing. It's so disheartening as a mother to know that, if a white police officer sees my 12-year-old son, he's seeing a threat. He's seeing somebody that's dangerous. And I've seen several videos where, there might be a white police officer and a white assailant that's attacking them physically or doing all kinds of things. And I'm thinking, if that person was black, they wouldn't have lived. Right. And so, in that kind of environment, with my kids being 12 and 7, I just have to keep them close until they have the maturity, to understand how to handle themselves. Right. So I keep them pretty close and, just try to talk to them about safety. I don't let them walk around. They get rides everywhere. And, until I'm trying to figure it out as I go in this climate. I don't really have an answer. Right. Good question.
And then Tyree, is there anything that you do to make sure that your mental stays afloat as a black man living in society? And then also something that we as black people, when we study our history, it can become very depressing. It can become something that, creates anger in our hearts. You being a historian and you delving into that work, you working at these museums, a lot of the information is shocking. So how are you keeping your mental basically afloat as a black man?
That's a great question. Black people, as a collective, we all suffer from post-traumatic slave syndrome, where we all are suffering from PTSD that is literally biologically transmuted between generation to generation to generation of stress and anxiety that each of us are trying to navigate in the everyday, right? Black women are dying, black men are dying at disproportionate rates because of stress, cardiovascular disease, but these are predicated on the ancestral traumas that our great-great-great-grandmothers and great-grandfathers incurred because of enslavement. So, just being black in America is stressful. just stressful. And I'm not talking about just going to get groceries. I'm just talking about our sheer existence. And so for me, self-care is important. Personally, I go to the farmer's market every Sunday and rotate flowers in my home, because you want to know what? I control the flowers and they bloom, you know? I also go to the farmer's market and pick fresh produce, because I know what I put in my body is actually in my control.
Absolutely.
To varying degrees. And then I also just spend time with other people so that I can share my experiences, black, white, purple, yellow, green, and have them understand that I may look different, you may look different, but our walks of life can be very similar if we choose to have empathy. And yeah, just wash and repeat. But being black, y'all, it ain't easy.
It's not. Yeah, and one point that I did want to bring up, as I travel and stuff and go into different spaces where there aren't a lot of black people around, more so like outside of America, there's an absence of that anxiety there, and you realize how heavy your anxiety here is in America. And we realize that because people aren't really checking for us or feeling like we're a threat and stuff. And that's really a sad thing to see, that we have to go elsewhere, away from our home, to experience the removal of anxiety, but the fact that we don't even know that we are existing with this anxiety. A lot of us, are concerned when we come into spaces that don't look like us. A lot of the times when we see other black people, we feel a realm of safety, and that should just be a human thing. When you see humans, you should be able to feel a realm of safety, like, oh, okay, I know this human doesn't have it out for me, or whatever. But that's pretty much how deep it is. Those are the anxieties that we carry, and unfortunately, sometimes black people die and they never even realize it. So imagine whatever anxiety that you have just as a person, imagine having that and never dealing with it, or thinking that it's so normal, you just carry it around with you every single day and living with it till the day that you die. A lot of our grandparents, a lot of our parents have done that. This generation, we're trying to heal the generation up, heal the line up, and make sure that our seeds that come are healed as well. But that's what our history basically has done. So when the question is asked, why is it so difficult for racial justice to exist in America, is because they've never seen it before. And that's basically all that it is. So we are going to open it up to questions. If anybody has any comments or questions, go ahead. Oh, we have a mic. I'm sorry. He did tell me that. I completely forgot.
Y'all doing all right? Y'all doing all right?
Heavy.
My question is
it on?
hello?
Yeah,
Okay, it
we're
works. My question is for Aaron. One thing that I did research on, because I was always interested in why with this stuff like the Stanford prison experiment, I was always interested in why the police system is more brutal than some other areas. And I came across that's like police officers have only like 8 hours, like in their training, they have only like 8 hours of training in de-escalation, but over 40 in firearms. Would you say that that affects
Good question.
how people, like how the police officers react to situations, and like which choice they choose, like to de-escalate or to use their firearms?
I definitely thank you for your question, man.
Yeah, good question.
I definitely agree with if that's the way their training is. Yeah, of course they're gonna be. I've had this discussion with other officers as well, and now the way that they're, old school officers are saying, the academy is BS now, because the way they're doing it now is totally different from just 11 to 12 years ago, where they started implementing the certain that everyone is a client. When I started coming through, they were like, everyone is a client, whether you're a suspect or just a regular citizen, you're a client of the so you treat them as you're serving them. That's what they're teaching the academy at LAPD. They're also now. I just talked to a Ricky yesterday about what they're doing. They're like, I have a training. They take the class that out of like almost a year done with their probation, and they'll take them back to the academy, and now they're with psychologists and like going what they call BSS, is the behavioral science and they're actually teaching them and talking to them about their mental aspect and then how are they feeling right now, and then we've had trainings where a lot of officers were reluctant at first, and at the end of the 4 days, because it's like a kind of like what you would call a kumbaya thing. At first they're like, oh, this is a seance because they got the middle and this and that, and then like they're teaching us meditation, but then after 4 months you got officers crying, talking about my past, and and so it now they're teaching you the human aspect of things. I've never got into a shooting. I've never gotten, in 11 years on the job, I've never got into a shooting. I accidentally discharged my shotgun, checking it, that everybody laughed, but I didn't at the time, but I've never got into a shooting. And I believe that, even in the hood, from gangsters to police officers, if you live by the gun, you're going to die by the gun. If you think about waking up thinking about, oh, I'm going to get into a shooting and I'm ready, I'm prepared. Like, if a shooting, and that's all you're going to think about, you putting that into the universe. I mean, I promise, man, I don't think that way. I don't think about shootings. I'm prepared for it because I go and I shoot, and I have to be prepared. Because if somebody came here with a gun right now, well, I ain't got mine right now. But if somebody did and I have one, I'm going to jump in front of.
You're trained to do it.
I'm trained to engage.
Right.
However, you're absolutely right. If there are agencies out there and they're teaching that way, they need to stop.
Right.
It's not going to help anybody. They can go to the range on their own, but they had that percentage that's crazy. They're not doing that in LAPD
warped,
anymore.
Definitely warped. Is there another question, comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, same guy. Sorry. I have a question about policing too. So, like patrol. Like whenever I drive to go see my cousins, like in Crenshaw, South LA, Watts, I see like 10, 20 police cars just roaming around. They're not really doing anything, but they're roaming. Like you see them, their presence is felt. But if I go to Beverlywood, Hollywood, like all these other areas, I'm not going to see any cop cars. Like I'll see one maybe, like a few hours or so. But back where I'm from, like I see them all the time, and like it's not necessarily like they're antagonizing anyone, but just their presence is felt and stifling. And I wonder if they're ever trying to move away from that, or they're trying to uplift these communities so that they don't have to patrol like that. But like, can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, real quick. So thank you for your question. The program that I'm with, the unit that I'm with, the Community Safety Partnership, that Connie Rice is the one who she used to wake up every morning looking to sue the LAPD, she said. I used to wake up every morning. I was trying to find ways to sue the LAPD. She said, let me stop being a part of the problem and start being a part of the solution. So she got with the chief. They implemented this. What the sheriffs were also doing at one point in Compton was if you go to Watts and you go into the project, or the housing developments they call them now, they're not the projects anymore. You see all those officers. That's probably me. That's probably us. We're supposed to be outside of the cars for about 60 to 70% of the shift, walking around and engaging in the community. I can see what you're saying, but then once we leave, they're having a service for somebody, a repast for somebody tomorrow night. Once we leave, other gangs are trying to go into there and kill whoever they see. And they're having a repast tomorrow. And then once they leave, they say, where was y'all at? Y'all supposed to be in here. So the community, I would say the 99% of the community want us there. It's the 1% that's doing the dirt that don't want us there. Now, are the cops that are being there, are they there harassing people? Or are they there getting out, talking, community? I coach a basketball team with 2 other officers. The Watts Rams are out there coaching teams. We got officers that are picking up tutors from USC and bringing them to tutor the kids for after-school programs. So we're there because of those type of situations. We're trying to deter the crime, but are the officers doing what they're supposed to be doing,
Right.
and getting out and smiling and talking and high-fiving, even if you a gangster. Why? And I got in it. Why you always saying hi to them, the gangsters? Why you always saying hi to them? I'm like, because, I mean, they're part of the community. They live there. Some don't. Some don't. Sometimes we got to be like, yo, we can't shoot dice right here, right now. Stop drinking. Like, what are y'all doing? Like, but we're there and they're there, so we might as well work together.
And
you
I
know what I'm
think
saying?
that's a good point of building relationship, and I think that's something that has to. In my notes, I put one is a job and one is mere existence. So you don't ask the person that's existing to do better. The system has to do better. So I think they have to definitely like try to build those relationships, like just how he said he's coaching basketball, or he goes and he plays basketball with the men that are around. Like that shows a personable aspect of him. So I think that's a good point for sure. Are there any other? Go. Okay, we have two. So.
Okay, I had one comment for Aaron when you mentioned that we see cops under the same umbrella, where because you see you, we just are in fear. But that's the same as a black person in this country. We're all under the same umbrella as well. The color of our skin is a threat. And the other comment I wanted to say was to Tyree. We are, yes, we are anxious in this society. It's systematically set up against us. But we also have to see our accomplishments in spite of. We're so much more than our past, our slavery. And our history is world history because we're the first.
Right.
And without us, there would be no one.
Right.
So we have to put that out there as well.
Yes.
Can I just? I totally agree with you. I remember there was these females. I think I told you the story. Well, there was these females, and they were just like, "Fuck you, y'all." Yeah, it was a crazy party. A fault ensued. Officers was chasing a guy with a gun at the same time on the same street. It was crazy chaos. We blocked everything off. I was getting cussed out. Some other officers was getting cussed out, and instead of and I, you know, my part is to try to be transparent, and so I walked up to her about 5 minutes past, and I was like, you know what, you hurt my feelings. She's like, she looked at me like I was crazy. She said, what you talking about? I said, you talking about I'm a mother effer and pig and all this stuff. And she goes, well, y'all are. I said, do you know me? I don't think I ever met you before. Damn. I said, I can say, and I'm not going to, but I told her, I said, I could say that all black women have attitudes. And she looked at me and was like, man, that's a good point. I was like, exactly.
Good point.
I said, exactly. I said, I can't say that. I can't say that. I could say that you have one and she doesn't. And she was like, no, definitely she does. But I said, exactly. I said, I get what you're saying because of the history, but I'm an individual. I didn't pull over your brother. I didn't pull you over. I mean, I still get scared to get pulled over by the police. And so what I got pulled over by the police with my kids in the car at night, cold. But guess what I do? I turn all the lights on in the car and roll down all the windows. So by the time they get up to the car, they can see everything in the car. This whole don't open your window, no, forget that. I do not want a nervous cop coming up to my window. I just don't. I don't want a nervous cop. Right. So I roll down all the windows. They can see everybody and everything. And guess what? I'm walking away.
Right. Let's get this. You have this comment.
So first off, thank you everyone for your time.
Yes.
I work in the independent school sector, where words like diversity, equity, and inclusion are thrown around frequently, right? So I just offer that as context, and I'm curious because the word justice has been thrown around a lot, right? One of those really loaded terms.
Right.
It sounds pretty, but it's like, what does it mean, right? Dr. Cornel West says that justice is what love looks like in public, and tenderness is what it feels like in private. And I'm curious as to what each of your definitions of justice is.
You wanna, Tyree?
Justice looks like reparations. It looks like atoning for every injury that has been incurred by a group to another. And justice looks like both groups having the same share in the American project without any drawbacks. But in order to do that, you have to repair the injury caused. Right. Yeah.
And I think it's also, justice is what's right. I think I wrote a piece and it was about slavery being taught in America and how they just don't do a really good job of it. And my answer to that was basically that America is not ready to apologize. And America can't hand out those justices because they are not ready to apologize for what they did wrong, because they're still trying to justify it as something that was right and necessary. So for me, justice is what is right, and put your family in the same shoes that they put us in. We were literally, and I've been to Africa, and to drive around as a black person that's, a descendant of slaves, and to see the culture and to think they had to be really sick individuals to strip us of this and put us somewhere where we knew nothing about it, and to take all of that beautiful culture away from us and to put us somewhere where there was absolutely nothing that resembled where we were from, and then remove the access that we had from there. So put your family in that. If they took your kids away from everything that you taught them and moved them somewhere in the forest and forced them to try and create something for themselves, that's inhumane, and it's not right when it's your family. So when we talk about justice, you have to put your family there, put yourself there. If it's being done to you or if it's being done to someone that you love, is it right? Because I know sometimes, not even sometimes, I know we as black people are not seen as humans. So put your family there. Put your family there and ask, if this was done to my family, would it be right? Because that's all justice is that we want it to be right. And that's in layman's terms. It's just what's right. Put your family in that place and ask, would I want this to happen to my family? We talked about the show that 50 Cent is producing about the black man who was not even guilty, and he had to basically fight his case. He had to go and study law and go and fight his case when he was innocent to begin with. Put your family there. Put your brother, your father there. Imagine you waking up and you knowing that you can't see your father, your brother. He's innocent and he has to go and put all of this effort. Imagine if he's doing that in prison, what he could have done in a law school, how much he could have propelled. But he had to do it in prison to get himself out of something he didn't even do. So put your family there and ask those questions. Is it right for my family to have to go through this? If not, it's not justice.
Right. And I mean, for me, justice means the end to privatized prisons, which is the new slavery. Locking people of color up for cheap labor, to continue to put into this unfair and unjust system that we continue to live in. I mean, we have to, in order to dismantle and get to justice, it's going to require those that are benefiting to basically give up that privilege and agree to come down and be equal with the rest of us.
I went last because I'm not a smarty. I wanted to see which one I wanted to pick. I like your answer. I think that it is the right thing to do. I look at it like this, and then you talked about, we have to be willing to look back and apologize for what the relationship between community and police is like the relationship between two people that come together in a romantic relationship. If I cheat on my wife or my girlfriend, she's scarred. She's scarred. You know what I mean? So the next one, I'm just speaking on. I'm just speaking on. It's not experience, all right? But I'm just saying. If I get with you and you've been scarred and you've been cheated on and you've been abused in some way, I know a lot of people would be like, well, I don't have to apologize to you for that person, but I do. Yeah. Police have to apologize to the generation for the past generations. just because we chose to step in front of a bullet for you, so why is it so hard for you to apologize? Yeah, I'm so sorry for what your family went through in the past, but I'm here to serve you now.
Right.
And I'm here to help you through whatever it is now.
And I think what's important about that is the selfless in it, because when you are a servant or you do service, you have to remove yourself, and like you said, giving power to like the wrong people. A lot of these police officers feel like they are the authority and they are on top. So that whole thing of I'm gonna have to apologize, it's like no, because the authority, wouldn't apologize. Our parents rarely apologize to us. That's kind of the mindset that it is. But we have another. Hey.
Yes. Hey, everybody. My name is Norshelle. Is this on?
Yeah,
Okay.
now it is.
I work for a member of Congress,
Yes.
actually, who represents Watson and Compton. So thank you all for being here. I wasn't expecting to see you, Aaron, here. So my question is, well, the fact that I work for a member of Congress and I'm from Watts, I don't see people that look like me coming into my office until there's an issue. So how can we get more people to actually be interactive and proactive instead of reactive?
I think Nina's doing good work with.
Yeah, I'm extremely active in my community, and it's about being a stakeholder. Once I bought property and had children, I was vested, and so I care. I care about how my community looks. I care about how people feel. I care about what's going on at City Hall. I'm very involved, so it's about kind of letting the community know that they matter and that they're welcome to get involved.
I think also with Compton, and shout out to T, shout out to the Hub Radio. With the work that they've been doing, the Hub Radio, we have a hub that we go to and we, plan things and stuff. But shout out to Dre, because he's the reason why I vote. He, kind of got on me like, you talking all this stuff, but you ain't voting. So I was like, let me go register. But he's been leading a lot of the stuff that is in Compton, and it makes us want to go to the things. Like we said, we were just at the event with Bloomberg, not supporting that man, but we were in the room because of, with Dre and the connections that we've basically made. So I think it takes and you're doing a great work too. So even if it takes you being that person for Watts and making sure that we're aware of what's happening, because a lot of times we're not aware.
Oh, but and seeing people that look like us, our mayor in Compton is a black woman who's
Right.
37 years old. She's a millennial. She's amazing. She's one of become a really good friend of mine. So just seeing people that are like us in this space, will give people the courage to say, oh wait, what, you look like me, you talk like me, we're from the same circumstances. Maybe this is for me.
Right. We have time for one more question. Go ahead. Can we get the mic?
It's right.
So from a historical perspective, and I just wanted to comment, it's just really sad to be a black man and a cop and have to roll down your window so they don't mistake you for whatever they mistake you for, so that you keep your family safe. Before you can say I'm a cop, before you can show your badge, you still black, And I have, these are my kids, so I growing up, I grew up in Compton and, South Central, and we were brought up, don't trust the police, F the police, because they ain't got your back. That's how we're brought up, right? So you have this fear, this long history of fear of the police, right? And so it's a catch-22, because I support the police, but some police, right? So I tell my kids, you don't know who you're coming up against, because I don't believe in F the police. We need them, right? Because there's people that need to be in prison. There's people who commit crimes and horrible things. So I thank you for your support, and I support the police when they're trying to do the right thing. Unfortunately, I think a lot of these police officers that are coming out of the academy and they're trying to retrain them, and if you come out and you meet a veteran who's still thinking the old way, they were like, get rid of that, so we can be stuck. So from a historical perspective, black people have been traumatized by the police. Yes. So when you go outside, you're meeting the trauma from their mother and their father, and whenever, especially when you're poor, right? Because you only see the police when everything went to hell, when somebody shot. Your communities people in the community on drugs or gangs or violence, then here you come and harass, right? That's how we've been brought up to think about the police. So it's just really sad that we're in that state, and I really appreciate you showing the human side. That's what it is. You're a human being. You're not before it was the blue uniform, right? And whatever they did, I'm with them. And it seems like you and other police officers are trying to turn away from that. And I'm trying to tell my kids, there are good cops out there, but there are some cops that need to be off and in prison for beating and killing people.
Right.
That's what they do to some people. So I don't think if a cop has an intention, like you were saying, you have an intention to pull your weapon, you want to shoot somebody, doesn't matter what you do. You can roll down the windows, you can smile and do whatever you can, and it's over if that person wants it to be that way. Yeah. But just going back to a historical perspective, and I don't think that prisons are the new, it's not new. It's been around a long time. They've been using prisons to enslave black people for a long time. Yeah. But going on back to it from a historical perspective, how do you bridge that gap? Because my kids would never say F the police, right? Because I don't teach them that, right? But I got people who I grew up with, they still say it. And I don't, I understand when they're angry. So from a historical perspective, how can you bridge these people? How can you bridge our people with, because the police was our enemy, right? We've been policed, right? They weren't there to serve.
No. I understand.
So, but that's not what you're trying to do now. So how do you bridge that gap?
To bridge the gap between this generation to the last? I just want to understand the question.
So how do you bridge, so we have a long history of police being our enemy,
yes,
black folks' enemy.
Yeah.
Anywhere.
Sure. So just bridging. I got
bridging
it.
the gap.
Yeah. Okay, so I would be remiss to not say this in a room full of people who are so qualified to hear this. And as a historian, I have to say this in every room. The history of policing in America starts with enslavement, which we should definitely acknowledge in the room and honor, because so many of our ancestors were lost underneath that. And the property, them being the property, every time they tried to flee, they were actually brought back and were killed and or maimed by paddy rollers, who were the first form of law enforcement in this country. This is as old as this country is. This is ancient. This brother is so important because this is the first time that I've ever been on a panel where I'm seeing empathy from a law enforcement officer being shared. But he is an anomaly in a system that doesn't clone or replicate his empathy throughout the whole department. We need him. And I'm so glad today to be able to walk away from this conversation and say, I know one. I know one. But there's an entire system that both he and I are involved in, as a citizen, as a servant, that we have to understand that it's not about a bridge, or it's not about exclusively a relationship. It is about justice, and justice is material. If justice is not distributed materially from a government to a citizenry, then that government and that citizenry have to come to a table historically to understand why the government isn't serving its best interests, and then indict it and then build anew.
Do we have time for one more comment, or we're?
That's
we're
right.
done?
I know.
Okay.
Hold on, I got 1 second. I got 1 second.
Okay.
1 second, just real quick. One quick. First of all, thank you, brother, for that.
Thank you for that
I can see
question,
that you're a good father. You told him to sit up, and I like that. All right, so you're a good father. You're a good man, and thank you. I see what you're saying. However, and you're absolutely right, and that's your side, that historic side and that political side. That's what y'all got to fight for, and that's what y'all fight for. In the meantime, while all that is discussed behind closed doors, we need to hire these cops that have been through life experiences, and not 21-year-olds. I'm sorry, I know it's good for pension later, but 25 and up is probably the best way to go. And at the same time, the bridge and the gap, it can happen. It's not. I'm glad you're not teaching people F the police, but if you do come in contact with a police officer, ask them questions. They talk to them. Ask them questions. Make them uncomfortable. I promise you, if you come to Watts, if you come to Watts, I can walk through Nickerson Gardens, Jordan Project. I can walk through these places with like this, no gun on, and they be like, "What up, Thompson? What's up, Aaron?" Because of that relationship that I built and that bridge that I built.
Right, and I think I also, like we said, we really appreciate him. But I also want it to be said, like, this is not the regular, thing that we deal with. So yeah, driving that point home, thank you for coming and spending your Friday night with us. For those of you guys that are going to see the play, just make sure you're taking this conversation, like we said, shelf it. Because for us, it is life and death. Like you said, with him, as a police officer, it's a life and death thing for him. So enjoy the play. Yeah, and thank you guys, my panelists, for joining me. I really appreciate it. And thank you to Center Theater Group for having us.